Shaykh, I don't want to harass you, wallahi, but I'd love to have a few lines.
And he's a good singer.
Few lines, Shaykh. Just give me the first opening lines.
Okay, it goes like this.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wasalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your brother, Boonaa Mohammed, with another episode of Muslimi Meets. And I'm joined with a few wonderful guests, mashallah. We have some shuyukh with us now. We had some entertainers, we had some comedians, we had some, but now, mashallah, we have knowledge. Allahu Akbar. And good looks as well, mashallah. Allah.
All over here.
So we have Shaykh Ahmad Saleem, who's with us, mashallah, and Shaykh Abdullah Misra. Allahu Akbar. I got it right?
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. And my good friend and co-host today is brother Yusuf Akiri, MashaAllah. Now, Yusuf, I don't know how much of these two brothers you know about. Shaykh Abdullah, MashaAllah, has a Seerah song, okay, that gives you, and how long is the song, Shaykh? Are you like the full length of the song?
It's about 150 lines,
Okay.
which is about 24 minutes singing.
24-minute song,
Wow, mashallah.
okay?
Mashallah.
Seerah from beginning to end, MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
Wow.
And for those of you who are unsure, don't know about this, I mean, the Arab tradition of poetry and storytelling, even which predates Islam, the Arab were people who loved their history, and their history was a lot of times done through poetry, right? So this was a way that a lot of, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the wisdoms why Allah Azza wa Jal chose the Arab for the Quran, because they came from this tradition and legacy of, long 24-minute songs, subhanallah, right?
Grammy doesn't qualify.
Uh,
It's so long.
It's
It's
too
not
hot for the
qualified
Grammys. Too good for the
Grammy.
It's an album.
It's an album on its own. It's a whole album in one. Album in one.
There you go.
It is an album.
So, I mean, this album, we should call it an album now. This song, the Seerah song, what was the inspiration? I mentioned a little about the history of, Islam and art and how history, and oftentimes, this was how the Arab used to teach each other about even their legacy and history was done through these long poems and songs.
That's right.
What inspired you to create this specific song?
Well, I think before I became Muslim, I was always into music. And after I became Muslim, I separated from the lifestyle that I had before, went overseas to study. And when I was overseas studying, I saw this tradition of Arabic poetry that could be recited or sung. And as a beginner student, you're learning about the Seerah, learning about the Hadith. You don't understand exactly what's being said because that is a very rich language.
Right.
But then you ask yourself, how come we don't have something like this in English? And so this is where it kind of started, trying to draw on my past with music and then trying to combine it with the knowledge that we were studying in the Middle East and bringing it together in the English language to create a tradition that people can use now to celebrate the life of the Prophet ﷺ, to celebrate Islamic aspects of life. So,
Mashallah.
No, I mean, it's beautiful. And I think
And it's his entire life.
the Prophet ﷺ's life.
Yeah, like entire
Oh,
story
okay.
in
I thought you
24
meant it took
minutes.
his whole life. I was like, oh, that's
No.
quite a while, right? How long?
12 years.
12 years, subhanAllah.
Mashallah.
So, and it starts with the Prophet ﷺ's life.
It starts a little bit before.
Now, Shaykh, I don't want to harass you, wallahi, but I'd love to have a few lines.
And he's a good singer.
Few lines, Shaykh. Just give me the first opening lines.
Okay, it goes like this. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of the most merciful, for whom these words are said, we recount the noble seerah of his Prophet Muhammad, as Allah and all his angels send blessings on the Nabi. O believers, pray for peace and blessings on him faithfully. And then it starts.
Allah. Go ahead, Shaykh. Don't be shy.
And then it goes from Isa alayhi salam, how
Allahu
he
Akbar.
talked about the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then goes into the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his birth, his lineage, into his childhood, into his young adulthood, as he grows up, and then he receives revelation all through the life, the Meccan period, Medinan period, his passing, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then what happens now to the person in the present when we're not with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So his advice for us, when he's not with us in the same way. And how do we get by? And then there's a chapter on the hereafter, when on the day of judgment, we will see him finally. And he will, intercede for us. And then finally, a section talking about his qualities.
So, I mean, that's a very in-depth piece of art.
Alhamdulillah.
You know, if we compare that to the junk we hear on the radio today, you know, La ilaha illallah. May Allah protect us.
Ameen.
To hear, you know, that seerah done in such a beautiful way, I feel like, you know, this could be something, and again, I don't think it's targeted at children, but I could see how it would be such a helpful tool
Oh yeah.
to help teach seerah to children. Was that something you intended as well? Was there a dual purpose there?
No. So this funny thing is, I like nasheed and English song for myself and for
Right.
adults. But what happened was, parents want their kids to learn and be able to memorize, and this song is memorizable.
Yes.
So all the children around me started to memorize it, and I realized it was because it's a knowledge poem. They were memorizing it faster than adults, and they could go back later on in their lives and access a point of the seerah by going through the song.
A framework.
Yeah, a framework. The same way that we can recognize a brand by its jingle from when we were kids.
Yes.
They can recognize seerah and then cite it. That's like a hiv of seerah.
Yeah.
So, and it's a very common tradition. Like you'll find that Arabs, they will do like nazm of like in the entire Shafi'i fiqh in like alfiya in 1,000 lines of poetry.
Yes.
So now every single possible mas'ala that you can think of in the Shafi'i fiqh has been encapsulated in these 1,000 lines of poetry. So if you memorize a zubat, which is the poetry, you now know every possible mas'ala that has been asked in classical books, and every word in that line alludes to something. And I think that's what Shaykh has done beautifully in that song.
MashaAllah.
That you can look at a word and like unpack it.
Right.
And it's an entire story behind that word. Right?
SubhanAllah.
And my kids love it, but
Yeah,
my
yeah.
kids just like,
Oh man,
in the
mashallah, I
car,
can
they're like
imagine.
on it.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Sheikh Abdullah, there's so much to unpack here. I mean, mashallah, I mean, basically summarize the entire life, the Prophet, the Rasul Sallallahu in this, you know, in these lines, it takes so much work. So this endeavor that you partook in, what inspired you to partake in this endeavor? I mean, it's a very intimidating endeavor too, when I'm looking at it, you know, and also a certain level of responsibility too.
Yeah, that's from Allah. If I thought about it like that from the beginning,
Yeah.
I never would have started. But I was, you know, studying. It was 2008. It was a very lonely period in my life. And honestly, I feel like in our society, we debate about the Prophet ﷺ, but we don't spend time really learning about his life. There's a lot of debates about him. And a lot of the questions that we receive from young people are like hadith with doubts that other Islamophobes or missionaries or whatever have put into their heart about the Prophet ﷺ.
Yeah.
And so they're coming with negative impressions, Muslim kids, from the get-go. So why don't we instill positive impressions through art, through all types of things that we can, literature, whatever else it is, from the get-go, have a positive impression. So when you hear these kind of doubts that come up, then you'll be stronger. You'll be able to fight them off. That was the problem. So people don't have the view of the Prophet ﷺ like how in Muslim countries you grow up loving the Prophet ﷺ.
Right.
Go to a Muslim country and say something bad. Go in the street. Just say something bad about the Prophet ﷺ.
No, thank you.
You could be a drug dealer. You could be a drunkard. You're gonna get beat up.
Yeah.
You're gonna get beat up. And if you want to solve a problem, you ask someone to send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, it softens their heart right away.
SubhanAllah.
You want to remind someone to behave themselves, you remind them of the Prophet ﷺ. In our societies, our young people, you realize we're not growing up with that instilled love that you're supposed to have in a Muslim culture.
Yeah.
But we have to create that culture. I know you're doing that as well. So
I mean, we're trying, and I think, you know, another issue that we find a lot of times with the youth, and this is tying into, you know, the work that you're doing as well, Sheikh, there is that disconnect. And,
Big time.
you know, that knowledge, that lack of knowledge. You can't love someone who you don't know.
that's it.
You know, you can't. How could you love even Allah Azza wa Jalla if you don't know what are Allah's names, what are His characteristics, what are His attributes? You're always gonna have, you know, think negatively or think, you know, in a different way. But to summarize that point, what are some of the challenges you're finding working with youth? What are some of the issues we're finding? Because I feel like, you know, a generation ago, I'm assuming your parents were not born in Canada.
No.
Okay, my parents were not born in Canada either. I don't think your parents were born in.
I wasn't born in
You were
Canada.
born in Canada.
I
Were
was
you born in
no.
Canada? You were born. I was born in Canada.
I was too young when I came. Like I was very small. So
Right.
no
So-
choice of mine.
Right. So I mean, for the most part, like, okay, we've kind of had our roots here now.
Yes.
That next generation,
Yeah.
our kids, your kids, my kids, Yusuf's kids, the Sheikh's kids, what culture are they gonna, you know, kind of come around? Like, one thing that I really focus on right now is creating a unique Canadian Muslim identity.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think for our youth, it was very easy for you and I to grow up. Okay, we're from this country. People say, "Where are you from?" Well, we're from there,
And we stuck to that.
and we stuck to that.
Yeah.
Now,
Exact masjid, like
now-
Khalid bin Walid or Desi Masjid or IMO. You knew the masajids you would go to.
and it meant something.
Yeah.
There was a legacy and a culture that came with it.
Community.
right?
sense of community.
What are the kids nowadays? What are they claiming?
So I think go back first one step. When you talked about something which is like awareness, loving something, right? Like, so for example, in our program that we run, like I run an organization called Teenagers, right? And so we have programs all across Ontario where we offer them. And what we find, one consistent thing, these kids don't love Deen.
SubhanAllah. Teenagers, you figured out they don't love Deen.
So they come to the program,
Yeah.
and when you ask them, close your eyes and write one word, like where nobody's gonna know. We're gonna close the lights. Write the word you identify yourself as. You almost never get Muslim.
Really? What would you get?
Like are different things. I'm like this. I'm that. I'm like different. They'll
Wow.
put different words.
Wow.
I don't know what I can say here.
Oh,
So-
it's the internet. You can say anything you want.
right? Yeah, but like different gender identifications,
Wow,
different
okay.
personas they have picking up.
Sure, yeah.
I'm an anime lover, like
Yeah.
these type of things you'd never see as Muslims.
Wow.
So what we actually realize is that we've got it wrong when we come to educating this new generation, right? We got to develop the love of the deen. When they see the nice side of it, like these songs, right, or different things, they're fun, entertainment with halal boundaries, they automatically develop the love of this deen, and they're like, okay, I want to learn, right? So that may take almost a year. Now, like our program, these kids actually are tired of fun, right? After being 1 year in the program, and then they came to me and they're like, when are we gonna learn stuff? I'm like, yeah, amazing. You're at a junction where you have actually began to love your identity as a Muslim, right? And that can happen only not by creating third spaces, because a lot of these new trend, I don't know, like let's create a third space, take them out of the mosques. Well, no. They gotta love the masjids.
Right.
So what we do is we come into the masjid and we run programs. Shaykh has attended a few. It is nothing like anybody is doing, and it's not rocket science. Like, you have living in one of the most amazing countries in Canada.
Absolutely.
You have access to so many facilities. You just book those places, little bit of organization, get all these kids out there. The Shaykh participated in our treetop trekking, 5-6 hours, biryani, catered biryani for them, up the game of food, like blow them away with, it's very simple. You want Muslims to be Muslims, give them nice food, a lot of fun,
Right.
and address their questions. If their questions are addressed, they will love deen.
SubhanAllah.
So that's what we do.
And make it accessible
And make it
to
accessible.
girls and boys.
We literally had a person, that's why I specifically say a person, that came dressed misgendered.
Interesting.
Right? But they felt comfortable enough in our masjid environment that we have created that they came in, presented themselves, whoever they felt like, and they asked tough questions. They asked, men are like this, men are that, men are super misogynist, men are all of these. And we were like, all right, let's sit down. Let's have a conversation about it. So that day, our entire sabak goes out, and now like, wait a minute, how many of you would like to talk about this?
Wow.
All hands go up. We're like, wait a minute, that's a concern. Now, you cannot be confined to a curriculum because that's a burning issue. Abortion is a burning issue when the issue was hot. It's
Right.
still hot. All these women are talking about it. What does Islam say about that? Right? So that's what we do. We help them develop the love of the deen, right? Your songs and things, your movie. My kids were like, this is the same guy from YouTube, right? And I was like, yeah. How did he come out of YouTube? My 6-year-old son. He's like, how did he come out of YouTube? I said, the way I go into YouTube and I come out, that's the exact same way.
But there's another thing you and Shaykh Abdullah are doing. You're creating, you didn't use this term, but you're creating this Islamic social fabric. This is very important. This is what you're doing effectively.
Yeah.
And you're not taking the story of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as an abstract,
Yeah.
but you're bringing it home, that narrative, because we are uniquely placed in Canada that we come from bicultural perspective, because the thing that what you're trying to address to is like, our parents and some were products of like importing certain cultural notions of we need to integrate at all costs. So there's this obsession. So what you and Shaykh are doing is that you're creating this fabric. And I think that's what's important. If I had the Seerah and the stuff that you just said in my upbringing, I'll tell you, I wouldn't be lost. I wouldn't be lost. And I grew up in a homogenous town in Quebec City.
Yeah.
So so this is what I think you're doing. And that's important. MashaAllah.
So I got inspired with Shaykh a
MashaAllah.
lot. He doesn't know this yet. I've never spoken to him on this.
Okay.
So I read his song. I did I sat one night, and for the last 10 weeks, my kids watched this show called Buyuk Seljuk, some Turkish show or something.
Okay.
whatever, Al-Arsalan or something like that. So
Al-Arsalan, yeah.
and they're like Q to the dot, 6, 7, 30, dot, this got to turn on.
Okay.
And I go in my library and I said, nobody has done a song about Shama'il, the description of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in English.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're working on it or not.
I'll leave it to you.
Are you working on it?
That's the second album.
You've been assigned.
Oh, dude. So I started working on that. And you know what? It was so amazing for me to actually realize that within the language, like I wanted to describe the eyes of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? So I went there and I actually picked up the English dictionary and I picked up the resources. I didn't have enough. I had to go to the library, looked it up. There's like 78 words that describe eyes.
Wow.
Then the challenge for me was like, I understand Arabic. So I'm like, okay, what's the word? Kana aydun Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam akhal. So take that word and then translate it. And now akhal means like he was almond-eyed.
Almond eye. Wow.
Yeah, it's actually a word.
Wow.
So I started doing that, but it's not polished yet. Eventually it'll come out.
Oh, but it's getting there.
He's giving us the appetizer a little bit.
I like that. Almond-eyed. That's a very unique description. I never heard of that before, even in English. Doesn't
You want an appetizer?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Oh,
Let's do it.
Bismillah. Oh,
Let's
now
do
we're
it.
performing. You're
No,
going
it's no
next.
performance here. It's no performance.
We're being treated here to
Yeah,
mashallah.
So I said, so it begins. It says, since you're watching this with your eyes, it only makes sense that we begin with his blessed eyes. His eyes were like no other eyes. Your eyes have never, no eyes will never, no eyes will ever see eyes that are better than the eyes of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The eyes of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, luminescent, breathtaking, divine and lovely, almond-eyed with elongated edges that looked heavenly.
Mashallah.
Right? So that took almost 5 weeks of putting together because it's an amana that you're describing Rasulullah. So I can't just throw a word in there.
Yeah.
I need to do my due. Like that almond eye was like an entire 3 hours
Oh, I can imagine.
to get to that word. That what is the word? But wallahi, I had so much regard for you that day, and we never spoke because I wanted to actually give you this as a surprise first.
Oh.
But you know, now you get to see it.
Now I got a sneak peek. Yeah.
And it's hard to English is not an easy language.
And
It's not.
describing.
Yeah.
But now you have to confine to that description.
Absolutely. Like there's other languages that are more descriptive.
I just add a description to Prophet. Yeah, to be what's more described.
I mean, you know that, and that also
poetic.
tells you the beauty of the Arabic language.
Yes, Allah.
Right? You can
Sophistication,
there's so many words to describe. So English is very limiting in that sense, right? It's not the same. You can't get that same expressiveness out of it.
100%.
And the rhyming
I mean,
is
there's
hard.
an entire.
It is.
There's
Yeah,
an entire
rhyming is
flip of lugha. Like if you look at, they say there are certain words that are indicative of the meanings.
Right.
So if the word begins with that, so for example, everything that begins with fa in Arabic language is always going to have a meaning of opening.
Mashallah.
Okay, fatih,
Wow.
falaq,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
Think of words. Everything that is going to begin with ghain is going to have a meaning of covering. Ghilaf, ghita, ghalq. Something is
A real
closed.
linguist here, mashallah.
Yeah.
Real linguist.
If you're gonna actually do that, English doesn't even come close.
Mm.
I don't know how you were able to find those words.
Yeah.
Mashallah, it was difficult.
Yeah,
12
probably make
12
up a
years
few of
just
them.
sitting.
I can imagine. I was sitting here. I was like, man, this is gonna take a while. But inshallah, hopefully, we can actually begin with like the blessed head of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and then begin with the body.
MashaAllah. Beautiful endeavor. May Allah give you tawfiq, mashallah.
Barakallah feek.
And may Allah bless you, Shaykh, for your wonderful song and for the efforts that you guys have both put into educating our youth and really helping to craft and create that Muslim identity for the future, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan to both our guests for joining us.
Thank you.
And Jazakumullah khairan for you for watching this wonderful episode. Stay tuned for more content here on Muslimi. Until next time, take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah.